Okay, I'm Zach. I didn't do an introduction, but I'm the first presenter. I'm not really presenting, I'm just kind of showing and updating because I didn't have time to make a presentation and there's not much to talk about. So anyway, I've been working on two different topics recently. One is the 325 Hudson Data Center, which is still coming up. And the second is Linux routing, which I've been working on for a couple of years, and we can talk about what we should do about it next because we're running out of time and we really need it. So the first thing is the 325 Hudson Data Center. It's ready. We have power, finally. The cross connect to Olmsted was connected today, so I'm actually going to go check it out this evening. Not that there's anything to check out, but there's an empty port with nothing in it, so I might not actually check it out. And we're waiting for a couple other things. We're waiting for DKIX, which will be our internet source at that location. So even if it was online, there's nothing to plug it into still. We're waiting a few weeks after a few months of negotiation. And we're waiting on routing, which is the stuff just below this, the next topic in this quote unquote presentation. So that's what we're waiting for. Here's some pictures. Firstly, this is our sales guy we've actually known for many, many years. There's me, and we're standing in front of the rack. This is from a day ago. We got power, 208 volt. It should be 120, but it's 208. That's fine. And our rack is a little bit precarious because of the location that they put us in the data center, but that's fine. So we will overcome these problems. So and it's bus power. But anyway, there's not much to show. Right here we have our own. Right here we have our own panel, and this panel is cross connects to the Meet Me room, so kind of cool. So anyway, that's the data center. Any questions on the data center? Oh, wow, lots of questions. You raised your hand faster than. Okay, well, it's over here. 1 second.
Testing. Okay. My question for you, Zach, is how many U's of equipment are going to be going in this space, and I guess what do you have in mind? Is it switches, routers, servers? I guess what can go here? Colo?
Yeah, so as you can see, we're in a shared rack, which was kind of not the original intent, but nevertheless, we are in a shared rack. So we have a third of a rack in the shared rack, so we can put whatever we want. We have a couple of kilowatts of power, so it's enough to put a few servers if we need to. This won't turn into a community colo like SN3, but it can be for core infrastructure. So the plan was or is just like SN10, Juniper core router or two, and a Linux routing platform for the edge. I hope that we can actually do Linux NAT routing rather than relying on anything MikroTik, which starts to get us into higher performance. So I think we should try that out and aim on that direction first. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. James, you have a question?
I mean, I think that was most of my question. Can we have servers there?
I can't hear you. Sorry.
Can we have servers there? That was so. I think yes. And like when will we? That.
Yeah.
Or how do we do that?
Yep. Yeah, similar to SN10, we can have servers in SN10 as well. SN10 has half a rack. This is a third of a rack. Yeah, how we arrived at that quantity is a mystery, but that'll be for a different discussion. So, yep. Cool. And the second topic, little update. So in around the end of 2022 or beginning of 2023, I started working on, or actually, since 2016, I was working on VPP routing, and this is a kernel bypass routing. So rather than just having Linux actually do the routing in the kernel, this goes into a program and user space. It makes a routing decision there, and then it comes back and gets dropped in the network card. So it's much faster, and I have test results that are in the 250 to 300 gigabit per second on the same computer that these results are from. However, you have to do a lot of things to make that work. And that's kind of, it's a good science experiment, but it's not a good production system. And so in 2022 timeframe, a few people on the outside who are still, are much more into this project than I am, built some of the key components that we need, or that everybody needs, to make this, more stable and more production oriented. And there were a lot of bugs all through 2023, and even until the end of 2023 in those components. And so every couple months I look back and I'm like, man, it'd be great to have that working, and it just doesn't. And so that means, okay, let's just throw it away and go back to kernel routing, right? Because one way or another, we need to have some kind of routing, and we can't wait an infinite amount of time for this program. So I've come up with an idea for a compromise, and the idea is go ahead and do Linux routing, set it up, put the network cards into a namespace, set up the route, set up the routing daemon, do all the stuff, and then start VPP. And the way VPP works is it steals the NICs from Linux. It basically takes them away so you can't see them anymore, and then it does its thing. Now, if VPP crashes, you're back to having no NICs again. So the idea is if we set up Linux and VPP to have the same exact settings, and there's a problem with VPP, just reboot the box and go back to kernel routing, right? And so the idea is we could have a safe fallback, because part of the issue I've been wrestling with is that we have to have double infrastructure for everything, and really double of VPP and double of data, so really 4x. And so this is kind of annoying. And so some time ago, I was talking with Brian, and he said, how much does Linux routing really do? And so I retested, quote unquote, the best that we can do. Not quite true, but close enough, right? And so kernel routing, I have 3 different dimensions I like to test in the lab. One is the smallest possible packets, just like a DOS attack, like massive network flood. And on a box of 22, or 21 cores and a 30 gigabit connection, you can only get 4 gigabit through before the system latency skyrockets, and the system just literally doesn't respond, it reboots. So that's not great, that's a DOS attack, right? And then if you have really boring web traffic, you can get around 7 gigabits. Mainly this is just because it's very heavy quantity of traffic being pushed around, even though you're on a pretty big link. And then there's another type of traffic, which is like an extremely heavily mixed traffic. It's like video and call and DNS and web and small requests and big requests. It's a very complicated test. And I can get 14 down, 5 up, right? So this is kind of like, it feels like an internet bandwidth test, right? It's about around that. And this latency is actually high. All of these latencies are very high compared to a switch. But it illustrates that you really can't get 10 gig through on a Linux box just doing regular boring kernel routing, within a couple asterisks there. And you can get a little bit more if it's like mixed, but it kind of depends. And if you enable NAT, you get down from, why do I only have one test result, I'll tell you, but you get from 4 down to about 2. And so you kind of lose quite a bit of performance by enabling NAT. And there's some other oddities. Why don't I have these other tests yet? I didn't have a chance to, I did run them, but the test results were odd or inconclusive. And so I don't have a number that I can show you that makes sense, but it is lower than these numbers. It's just, I don't know the exact number. The other tests are all repeatable. Anyway, and I've started working on VPP again, and again with that idea that we kind of overlap them. And again, it is a challenge still, even now. Any one of us can probably download the packages and install them, but whether they work right away is a question. And there's a whole bunch of things with huge pages and different kernel bypass drivers and secure boot and a bunch of other stuff, which just makes a big mess. So I hope to give another update in the near future. Questions? No? Cool. Thanks. Thanks. Who's next? Andrew?
Hello. I'm Marg, this is Andrew, and we've been working on a new partnership for the past year or so with a nonprofit organization in East Harlem called Youth Action, YouthBuild. And I'm kind of excited about it because this year has been a lot of progress in terms of like the size of our installs. We finished this big install here at Grand Street where we have 3 towers and everyone fibered up. And now we have projects in the Bronx, we have projects in Upper West Side, we have projects in Sunset Park, Brooklyn, Park Slope, Brooklyn, where we're moving into whole building installs. And it's becoming clear that as an organization that's been very successful historically within volunteer-driven workforce, to scale to cover more and more of New York City, we're going to have to make some strategic decisions. And one thing that I've been working on in my concentrating on outreach and community partnerships is that if we can build our volunteer corps, or at least our skilled worker population in each neighborhood where we have a presence, then this is much more replicable and scalable. So Youth Action, YouthBuild contacted us last year when they were applying for funding for their next-gen digital workforce training program. And Youth Action has a bunch of different, you can go to the next slide, a bunch of different courses that they offer. So it's basically for young people in Harlem, ages 17 to 24. They have, I know them from construction, so they getting kids ready for high-paying skilled trades jobs. They also do food service, building operations, like the engineers and supers of buildings. And now they have this course called the Next Gen Digital Workforce. And they wanted a letter of support from New York City Mesh to get funding for that course. And one of their instructors, who teaches at Bronx Community College, I believe, Edwin Reed Sanchez, and has a lot of experience with wireless installations in poorly served areas. He presented a few months ago. He was a volunteer with NYC Mesh and knew about us, and so hooked us up, and that there started our partnership. So from a letter of support for their funding, once they got the funding for their class and they're kicking off their first cohort of students, I think in May, this year, they asked us to help instruct those students in how Mesh is done. And the other nice thing about YAYB is that they own properties that house low-income people in East Harlem, which is also an area where we don't have a great presence. So this is a perfect match where we could get access to some rooftops, teach some young people how this is done, give them some real-world experience with, a lot of our volunteers are professional network and software people, so there's a mentoring aspect there and a networking aspect, like a people networking aspect. And here's a photo of one of the couple of classes that we held here in Grand Street to get the students ready, familiar with what Mesh does and what an install would be like. It started off with us inviting their class to come here to this meeting and to have a tour of this facility and how the fiber infrastructure has been installed. And also, we're learning about them too, this whole concept that these students, when they graduate from the Next Gen program, are going to have certain networking certifications that will help them, find employment, but they'll also have real hands-on experience configuring nodes and connecting them, troubleshooting them. And the result will be some local infrastructure that's built in East Harlem, and hopefully will also involve the students of Youth Action, YouthBuild in general to recruit and outreach to the residents. And so it's a win-win. And there's more funding down the pike. So here's our local partnership. We want to build community. So we're not just sitting here in this room and talking about where we're going to install nodes. We want to involve the communities where we're building so that they're also in, so to speak, in this room with us and maybe having their own rooms in each neighborhood. So, if the Bronx seems very far from here, there'll be a crew of knowledgeable mesh people in the Bronx, and we're all connected on Slack, and we'll communicate and support just as we have with Belmont Cove, with Olmsted, all these big projects that we're doing where volunteers are stepping up to run the work and getting support and feedback from the community. We want to support local workforce development, which is a great thing to be supporting. The outcome will be that people in that underserved area will have experience with internet connection, get some digital literacy. And also we want to train those people, in each community, make partnerships with nonprofits who are well established in the communities to groom more volunteers to support and install, so we can keep on supporting expanding. And then the last thing is I want to be able to document this work so that we can just start it up in another neighborhood as we go along. So I will pass this to Andrew, who is the volunteer who stood up to say, he would sort of coordinate the work with the next gen students.
Yeah, hey everybody. I'm Andrew. I live in Harlem, and this seems like a great opportunity to help expand coverage in an area where we don't have very much. In addition to hooking up the residents of these buildings, but then also building capacity in the neighborhood. So you can see East Harlem is an area, I think there's some history here where we had a node or two and it sort of peters out. This is, I'm really hoping, an opportunity to get something that stays and can grow and sort of self-sustain. Like Marg said, they have like 12 properties, I think, here, scattered throughout this area between 3rd and 1st Ave. And the line of sights are a little tricky, so I went and sort of scoped this out. This is the plan that we came up with. We've got a Link NYC kiosk on one side over here, and then that also happens to be the headquarters of YAYB, where they have a Spectrum connection. And so between these two sources, we can get a VPN back to the rest of the mesh, or a reliable pair of VPNs back to the mesh, right? And then we can then go and distribute it throughout the neighborhood, right? So this is the plan for how we're going to cover every single building in their portfolio and beyond into the rest of the neighborhood. And you can see we got up on some rooftops and we started working on this. We've got, putting in some cables, assembling a non-penetrating mast, having a pizza break, right? And so this is what we've built so far. So we got the students out and we put up a node on the rooftop of the headquarters with an SXT to the kiosk on 3rd Ave. And then we were able to set up a light beam point-to-point and beam it across to this other building, which is like very central. We're calling it's node number 641. And then that will allow us to reach the remaining buildings. And then 2 weeks ago, I think, we stood up this sort of first client of 641. And that, in turn, because there's sort of a building in the way here, right, that now means that we are one hop away from every single building in the whole system now, which is cool because that means if anyone in their whole setup wants to get signed up, we can get them set up without having to visit another address. And you can see sort of a little example of this here. I think this is what's so cool about the mesh, right? Is like we have this connection. You can barely see it in the tree, but there's a Link NYC kiosk over there. And we were able to set up an SXT in the right spot to see it, and then sort of run a cable over, beam it over from a different spot, which has line of sight to the next building up, right? And then build point-to-point, chain it together with the Omnis, and finally make it to, hopefully, right, we'll be able to plug someone who lives in one of these apartments over here, and they'll be able to use this whole chain. Something that's come up as we talk about this with the folks is that the residents who live here are extremely hard on their luck, maybe is a way to say it. And our standard install fee is likely a pretty significant burden. Some of these folks are paying less than that in monthly rent. And 1 in 3 of them from the sort of neighborhood statistics don't have any household internet connection, right? So like when we're normally talking about the value proposition for most of the people that we do installs for, we're saying, oh, you'll make it back on your Spectrum connection within a couple of months, right? Like these folks don't have a Spectrum connection, right? And so this is sort of a bit of an obstacle that we are looking to try to get around. And one way that we can try to do that is that the YYB organization, as Marg mentioned, right, is interacting with us because they want us to train these students, right? So they're in this position where they are training students, but they are also like the landlord of these folks. And so they, you know, are going to give us money to train the students, right? But of course, we don't run a training business, right? And so what we would really love to do is get these folks hooked up. And so my proposal is that we can use that money to cover the install fees for these residents, right? But then the question becomes like, how many people should we connect for that amount of money, right? And we, you know, simple math here, right? Like we could do 16 units at full price, 36 units at our standard subsidy price. There's, okay, 120. I think I made an estimate here, it was 180, so it's 120 in the whole area. And so if we collected our standard install fee, that gets us like $50,000, right? And so like obviously they're not offering us $50,000, but the cost to actually connect everything, like when I scoped it out, like all the hardware and stuff, because again, we're not paying for labor here, right? Like we're training the student, volunteers are training students, and so there's sort of no change of money there. It only costs about $10,000 in total, maybe it's a little bit more than that, depending on if we get full 100% subscription, but it's somewhere around there. And so to say, no, you must pay us $50,000 to get these low-income buildings hooked up when it's only gonna cost us 10, like that just doesn't feel right, you know? And so we want to be financially responsible. We don't want to be pouring, you know, hard-earned member donations down the drain. But these people are in need, and I think it's our job to help them. I also will point out here that like even if we're technically on paper taking a loss here, YYB is likely to be a strategic partner in the area, in the city going forward. And so I think this is definitely an area that is worth investing. So my proposal right now is to say, like, let's just round that 36 up from the subsidy rate to a sort of even 40 and say we'll do 40 installs for this price. And when we get to 40, hopefully we have a thriving partnership and we have just given them like 300 plus hours of student training time for that price, right? And they will be very happy to continue to invest in us, right? Like if we have to pursue grant money to make that happen or something, I think that's the kind of thing we can figure out. But I just wanted to signal that before I start hooking up people for, you know, without collecting the fee, right? There's sort of another arrangement and process here. And yeah, I'm happy to talk afterwards or if anybody has any questions about this. But yeah, I think this leads nicely into Marg also wants to talk about some other areas in which money can be involved here.
So the interesting thing about this area, the East Harlem, Upper Manhattan, and the Bronx are on the New York City map of you know, internet need. You know, 2/3 of the people are needing affordable internet, and only a third of the people have internet, right? So there are a lot of funding streams out there. Are they attainable by us in our current, you know, state of organization? Maybe. We're working on some. One of them that's coming down the pike is a lot of federal money, the NTIA, National Telecommunications Infrastructure, maybe? Lots of federal money, millions and millions of dollars. And there's also funding that has been received from the federal government by New York State that's being doled out under something called New York State Connect All. And there's different ways that they're doling out that money, some that we don't do. We don't dig up you know, trenches to lay fiber down highways, and we're not even going to dig trenches in New York City, right? But another funding stream is called AHCP, the Affordable Housing Connectivity Program, and not sure if we're a great fit for it. I think they want us to be a good fit for it. It's basically a portfolio currently of, I don't know, 100 properties, maybe 50 properties in the Bronx and Upper Manhattan that have expressed interest in getting subsidized to connect their residents. And then we are provisionally accepted to be in this program to be a provider of internet to these residents. But the way the program is designed is that you have to take that entire portfolio and bid on the entire portfolio. And it's not really, as an organization that grows organically, it's not really something that we know how to do yet or have possibly the capacity to do. But New York State Connect All also sees that an organization like ours may have some difficulties scaling up to qualify for some of these funds. So at the end of the month, we'll find out if they want to invest any money, $100,000 in helping us build capacity to get these grants, in which case we'll be able to hire possibly a grant writer and a program manager, a project manager. So let's say we did get that $100,000 and we could identify quickly someone who would spend full time for a year doing these tasks that we need to be done, that possibly could open up some of these federal funds. So I guess going back to Andrew's point, if we're helping people who are in need and have no spectrum bill to offset with their mesh donations, I think there could possibly be streams of funding to fill in the holes, like to maybe retroactively support this project or support after the first 40 installs, right? The other promising partnership that we have coming up is that New York Presbyterian, the Columbia University Hospital, owns a lot of properties, and we just had a meeting with them recently where they're interested in possibly allowing us to put antennas on top of the highest building in Upper Manhattan, which is the Health Sciences building, Hammer Health Sciences. So not only is that exciting because it can see everything, but whether they give us backhaul or not, it will be a place to bounce our signals off of to connect our mesh together up there. And even more exciting, I think, is the fact that Columbia is a big landlord, I think second to the Catholic Church, right? So there is a possibility that we may be able to get access to many of their buildings that they have in Queens and Brooklyn as well as the Bronx. And I also was having a conversation with the people here at Grand Street Guild. Grand Street Guild owns properties in the Bronx and in Brooklyn, right? So I guess the whole idea of let's spend some time documenting and pondering what we're doing here in Grand Street Guild here. What are we doing right? What will we do differently? How can we explain this to the next Grand Street building, what needs to be done? And also I think, at least from my point of view, I think it would behoove us to spend a lot of time thinking of, now that we know how to do it, how do we explain to others how they should do it so that we can remove ourselves from the risk equation a little bit more. We are really good at doing the technical stuff. I mean, we still struggle, right? But we have got that down pretty much to a science. Like this year, we've done 3 gigantic building projects and pretty much without a hitch so far, right? But where we lack resources is outreaching to the community to support. So every person having a range issue with Wi-Fi in their apartment is coming through us, the regular, volunteers who may or may not be able to visit. But maybe there's young people in the area who want to learn how to tinker, who want to support their neighbors. Maybe there's organizations that have access to those young people, so we don't even have to find the young people, we just have to find the organizations. So, really want to spend some time this year looking for more opportunities for partnerships. So Columbia Presbyterian, Grand Street Guild, any other neighborhood, YAYB, of course, any other neighborhood organizations that have their finger on the pulse of the neighborhoods, who we can teach, whose volunteers we can teach so that they can carry forth and do much more. So, this is part of the other presentation. One of the contacts that we got through YAYB was with Taino Towers, which is kind of like a similar development to here, very tall buildings in East Harlem. They're also part of the AHCP program. I don't know if they've gone forth and actually hired somebody yet to do their internet, but partnerships like this, maybe we can work something out where they can help us move our signal around. So if anybody wants to help out with these types of endeavors, is this map?
Yeah, it's just showing you how good Taino Towers is.
I like it.
It's a good roof.
It's very good. Yeah, very, very nice. Anyone wants to help out, we always can use people to help install and design network stuff. I think we could always also do a better job harnessing people who know graphic design, people who know outreach, people who know grant writing, community relations, that kind of thing. So join us on Slack. Yeah, project management, right? And Andrew, John, other people in this room have good experience standing up a new building. So if you want to take that on too, that's that could be fulfilling and is needed. So, any questions for us?
So, excuse my ignorance here. So, as far as like the install goes, so you've already set up all of that equipment, right, in those buildings, and so the install part now, the thing that the renters would pay for, is just running Ethernet down, and then do they get a router or something for their?
Yeah, so I'll clarify. The things we've set up are the red dots and the blue links. The gray dots and the gray links are planned.
Okay.
So we're sort of part of the way through.
Okay.
Less than half, right? And then I'll clarify a little bit about our normal sort of financial structure. Is usually the mesh pays for hubs outright ourselves, right? So when we stand up a neighborhood hub, we pay for the equipment that's there, and then when at the time of a connection, each apartment pays us a fee, right? And so this has been, I put this through the approval process for a hub, and we have 3 hubs here basically, right? And the idea is that, then that hub gets paid for by the installs of the neighborhood, right?
Right.
But in this case, right, asking for a little bit of a different process.
Yeah.
Yep.
Just to add to that, right? So a standard install, if it's a building we don't have any equipment on, we pretty much break even or even come in just a little bit in the red. And then some people donate and we're fine. If there's already like equipment on the roof, then yeah, it is mostly just a wire and a router. But, just a little bit extra.
Yeah, I'm curious for, like, let's say, for example, YAYB 641 there. Do you have a unit connected yet, or is it just a rooftop? And does that mean there's a PoE injector in someone's house or a common space or that? That's kind of the first part of the question.
Yeah, so here it is in the office, because this is the office.
Right.
And so that we're pulling power there. There's like a shelf in one of the rooms that we put up. Here we put up a shelf in the basement. We found an outlet. The super let us in, sort of made it work. And then here it is, they actually have an office in this building as well. So sort of like that's what we're going with right now, with the idea being that, we basically can't expand. We've hit the limits of their administrative space, basically. We can't expand further than this without continuing to do things like basements. And so really it is time to do apartments.
Right, roger that. And then is there like who's doing outreach or publicizing this to the people who live in these buildings?
Yeah, so they have staff, fortunately, and so we're working with one of the trainers to try to coordinate on that, but it is a gap. It's not really in his job description to do this sort of outreach, and so we're trying to figure that out. Yep.
One of the ideas that was bandied about, but we need to come up with a plan to implement it, is that these YAYB students, even the ones who are not the network technician class, are supposed to do X number of hours of community involvement and social capital. So doing outreach to neighbors and, educating them on the benefits of a network connection and how to access it could be in that purview. We just have to have a meeting and design that. So, but that would be an awesome thing to be able to offer to other neighborhoods as well.
You might not know this, but how much is YAYB paying for internet as it is? Because I'm assuming, oh, okay.
I mean, they have a FiOS connection, so we know about what that costs. Yeah.
Okay. And I'm assuming that if we get any of these other contracts and we're able to do a direct connection, that we could offer to take their internet bill effectively as just a kind of, okay, we know your funding is not great, but let's work together on this and reduce your costs elsewhere.
I do anticipate that in the future, as we grow, and if we get a separate backhaul here, that yes, we could offer the folks at the YYB office to switch their network over to use us, and maybe there's an opportunity for the students to learn something there in terms of switching their network over and doing some of that.
Okay.
But I don't see that as particularly relevant to the financial terms, just because of the timescales and because it's
That's fair.
different money, basically. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So for the setup here, is the internet going through the link New York City as well as the current Comcast connection that they have?
Yep, so we've set up a redundant VPN. So there's one VPN over the Link NYC kiosk, and there's also one, like there's a cable that goes downstairs to, and just plugs into their LAN. Yep,
Okay.
and we do a VPN over both of those.
Okay, cool. And then for any of the buildings that aren't connected so far, those would be part of like the install fee, like, or are they?
Yeah, so the idea is if we got someone in one of these buildings that wanted to get signed up, right? Because like there's an outreach step here, we have to get an apartment interested. Then we would stand up and we'd put basically a standard install with an Omni and a light beam on their roof. You hardly even need the light beam at this distance. Yeah.
Okay, cool, awesome. Yeah, thank you.
Right. Thank you very much. Oh, one more. No.
Did anyone say?
Right. Thank you very much.
Hey, John. Actually, hold on. Someone messaged asking for you to turn on automated connections. If you have that.
Yeah, that was the film, like, my way back saying no. It's not something that YouTube does. People spend too much time in Zoom, they think YouTube and Zoom.
Can you hear me? There will be, if there's questions, just hold on to it. Oh, wait. No, I hear you. Yeah. Now I remember. I'm not plugged in yet. Microsoft has decided that now is the time to do an update. What the This thing really doesn't like a cable. That's not what I wanted to do. Okay, hey everybody, my name's Matt Boyd. I've been with the Mesh for about a year. I'm going to talk about South Brooklyn and specifically a new hub that we've got going on down there. So I haven't given a presentation in like 10 or 11 months. So I do installs, support, project management, networking, communications, a lot of different things. My focus areas that I've been working on a lot more recently, I've been working a lot on rain backups for hubs. So everybody knows that with the mesh, sometimes when it rains very hard, the internet goes down. I've been trying to keep that from happening. So in most parts of Brooklyn now, it doesn't go down, it just gets a little slower. I've been working on fixing a lot of crowded sectors, trying to find smaller hubs or redistribute connections so that everybody has a little bit smoother experience. Physical topology, so essentially trying to find better ways to link hubs together. And then just overall processes, inventory support, little things like that, just to help us run smoother. As Marg mentioned, there's a lot of administrative overhead and not a lot of volunteers who really like doing it. And I don't blame them because it's not a lot of fun. So the easier that we can make it, I think the easier this will get. I personally joined the Mesh because I just really think that internet is for everybody. I don't think that we should be paying for-profit companies for internet or, you know, like water and electricity and things like that, but that's a topic for another day. Okay, so currently the challenge that we have in the south of Brooklyn, right, is we don't have a lot of we don't have a lot of presence down there, and the geography is somewhat challenging. So on the left there, you can see we have the Sunset Park Hub and we have the Sunset Park Library, which are great buildings. Unfortunately, there's a lot of trees and it's kind of on a hill, and they're on the wrong side of the hill, so there's not really much visibility as we start looking south. Flatbush Cats has been set up more recently. It's a good hub, it's just not very tall, right? So it's a little challenging for us, even if we can find a good building as we start looking south, to be able to get it connected short of a fiber lease, which can be very, very expensive. There is a Link NYC fiber pilot coming online soon at the Flatbush Cats hub, so we're going to have a fiber uplink there, but we need to figure out a way to get it to the rest of the neighborhood. So what John and I have discovered, we had a guy come to us in Borough Park. Now what I would say is Borough Park does not have a lot of demand for internet because of the culture there. However, this building is really, really great. It's 6 stories. It's got another 2 to the bulkhead. You can kind of see in my picture here, it's a little grainy, but the building itself is 6, and then there's 2 more stories up to the very top of that elevator bulkhead. It can clearly see the Sunset Park Hub, it can see Flatbush Cats, and it can also actually see Prospect Heights Hub all the way on the north end of Prospect Park, which is quite far away. Around the building, it has about 315 degrees of line of sight to everything around it for a couple of kilometers. There's a hospital behind it. It's actually this little building right here, but it only blocks a very small portion. The building is pre-wired for Cat 6 to the roof. Unfortunately, as we discovered, it is not pre-wired for Ethernet into the apartments, but it does have coax, which they're not planning on using. So we're going to do MoCA. And for those of you unfamiliar with that, MoCA is a way to send Ethernet over RG6 at a relatively low cost to provide in-unit connectivity. The reason that the building manager came to us is because he doesn't have any other internet service. Verizon had run some conduit, but is very, very delayed in installing service, and he can't get his certificate of occupancy, and he has people that want to move in. So we quickly put up an install with a light beam and an Omni, took a lot of pictures and did some planning. We have a commitment from him for the 5 HPD units, so the affordable housing program there, and there's 9 more units available in the building. So our plan is to hook those 5 up, but also build a hub out. This is just, it's kind of hard to see because of where you are, but you can see Sunset Park up here, Prospect Heights, over there somewhere is Flatbush Cats, I promise, but again, it's kind of grainy from here, but I will share it more broadly. It can see pretty much every rooftop in the vicinity until you hit the hospital over here. So even if we don't have a lot of people close by that want to get hooked up, this could be a great relay to other neighborhoods down to the south with really, really clear line of sight. The building costs overall, for those of you who haven't really seen what a hub costs, this is actually pretty standard for us to put some equipment on the roof. So the network rack, which we would put in a indoor portion on the 7th floor with a router, some power and cables, is about $1,500 of cost to us. The roof masts, to put a couple of non-penetrating masts on the roof because they don't want us to do much drilling, and other outdoor equipment and switches is going to be about $2,500. And then tools and miscellaneous parts. John really did all the work on this of putting the bill of materials together because he's way more experienced with this than I am. Inside the building, this is really where we're going to probably get most of our money back, if not all of it. Very, very low fixed costs. We really just need a switch in the basement and a couple of MoCA adapters. And then in unit, it's only going to cost us about $100 per apartment for a MoCA adapter and a router, right? And if our standard install fee is $240, we're certainly going to get, so we're going to be able to recover most of this cost of this hub without really having to do much of an input here. The existing commitment there of $1,200, and then obviously if we can get some of the other apartments hooked up, then we get closer to breaking even here. And then of course, as we hook up more people in the neighborhood, we recover those costs. Very, very related to what Andrew was talking about, where we pay for the hub up front, and then we make it up in the long run. You can see here, John standing up on a ladder with some wires coming out of the roof, and then in the basement, the wires that come in there, as well as a ton of coax that's just lying loose that we can reuse. For antenna selection and routing, from a Sunset Park perspective, it's going to be the primary link until Flatbush Cat's Link NYC fiber is live. It's only about 1 kilometer away, which makes it a good candidate for 60 gigahertz. For those of you that aren't as familiar with the antenna technology, 60 gigahertz is very high capacity. We can get 1 to 2 gigabit out of it. It just is much more sensitive to the rain, but at 1 kilometer, it's going to be really, really solid. Currently, we have that 5 gigahertz light beam. We'll probably just do another 5 gigahertz point-to-point, but we have to do a little bit more work at the Sunset Park hub because it is pretty much maxed out on equipment right now. We need to do some upgrades to get more power onto the roof. At Flatbush Cats, Daniel and Leiden have been doing a lot of work. As soon as that Link NYC fiber is online, we're going to make that the primary. Now, it's 4 kilometers away, which makes it not really a good candidate for 60 gigahertz. However, Daniel and I have been discussing 6 gigahertz point-to-point equipment. This is kind of new. It just, I think like a month ago, the FCC finally de-licensed it. So these antennas, I don't even know what the capacity is. It's close to 1 gigabit. And we want to pilot it here as well as another couple of buildings up north in Brooklyn. For routing and switching to keep costs low, we're going to go with a relatively low-cost indoor router that does allow us to get gig routing. We'll put an S16, a big switch on the roof. We prefer that because, again, we're going to be doing 2 non-penetrating stands, so we don't have an unlimited amount of space to put power boxes and all the other crap that we would normally put on top of a hub. So we're trying to keep this relatively straightforward. In the basement, we need a $50 switch and a couple of Mocha adapters. So this should be pretty easy to do once we can get it going. What we get from this, I think, as I mentioned, although demand is low only in that neighborhood, it's really going to be an excellent relay. It would open up, I think, parts of Kensington, which has had a lot of sign-up requests. If you pull, I'll pull the map up in a moment and you can see we don't really have anywhere for them to connect right now, right? So we can open up a lot of that, as well as north of this hub, there have been a lot of requests. And then obviously as we look towards Midwood and Mapleton and Bensonhurst, right? Those are areas that we just can't serve right now, and this would open a lot of that up. And just other alternatives. The other big one that we want to do, this Link NYC partnership that we have, it was discussed a couple of months ago in a meeting. They're pretty much giving us for free a fiber line or a fiber connection at high speed as a part of a pilot with the expectation that we sort of help them extend their network out. And that's where we think that this is really going to benefit it, is we can pull more hubs and local people onto that, and then they're kind of getting onto the internet together with NYC Mesh and Link NYC. So for us, really what's next is to submit the BOM for board approval. I'd like to talk to the guy about an access agreement for the roof, mostly just so that if in 6 months he changes his mind, he can't kick us off and tear all of our equipment down. They're going to get their certificate of occupancy, and then we're going to build it out. Like I said, John was a big help. I'm just going to pull up the map, though, so we can see what I'm talking about, if this doesn't kill us. So as we look at that neighborhood down here, and for those of you who haven't really messed with this map too much, there's a couple of clever little filters you can do up here. You can turn off sectors to get rid of all that blue because it's not actually real. It's just a, and then if we look at potential, you can see, especially here in Kensington and Prospect Park South, and certainly around Flatbush Cats, there's quite a few installs that have been requested. Borough Park is quite light, but north of it here is quite heavy. There's a lot of trees right here. We have a sector antenna on top of the Sunset Park hub, but it can't see very much. Thankfully, it can see this hub, right, at Borough Park, but it can't see much else. So we think that this is a really, really good roof, mostly just because it can see everything around it. I don't expect it's going to grow super quick, but I think it's going to open up a lot of the areas around us. It doesn't take much of a capital investment, and this is honestly like a 2-day build out because it's not a whole lot of equipment. So that's where we are. Say again?
Where's the other mic?
They've got it. Any questions?
So, you know, I live in the neighborhood.
Oh, cool.
And where we are, Flatbush Cats is,
The Flatbush Cats is
is
over
here.
here.
so what's this right here?
That is a new install we've got down here at 639. I don't know who that is.
Because I know that there are,
It's a balcony of a really tall building.
there's 3 really tall buildings on Flatbush right there that are really, really high. So it struck me if you could jump to them from Flatbush Cats, you could probably hit the whole of Marine Park and south of there.
Yeah, that would be awesome. If we could get more onto this building over here and get it a good uplink. Again, I mean, if we zoom out, right, we can see we just have nothing down to the south, right, other than one VPN node. It got rid of my filters, but right, there's a smattering of requests down here, but it's not something that's been, you know, a ton of demand, but there's no reason that we can't push further south. Again, the consistent challenge for us is really line of sight. These guys have been doing a great job up in Harlem of building as infrastructure, and this is another great area to do. And then once we can get some of that Presbyterian hospital, we can start doing Queens as well. So, I mean, this is to me, it's a good low-cost way to get into these neighborhoods, because the alternative is to get a full building to get hooked up and commit 100 apartments so that we can make a fiber lease affordable. But that brings a lot of operational cost to us. So, you know, the advantage of doing a hub like this is it's just really just one-time spend, and then we just got to support it.
So you mentioned this guy's talking to us because, you know, he can't get connected through a traditional provider. That's cool. I'm thinking, is there an opportunity there? Like, should we look to fill this role in other places? You know, one thing Marg was saying earlier is like, we can move really, really fast as compared to these other providers. Like, is there a way we could leverage this to like slide in and eat Spectrum's lunch in other places?
Love it. We just got to find out who's got access to the Verizon backlog. You know how to. So this guy's been interested in the mesh for a while. He lives like up here, and I don't think he's got line of sight. But he also has another building up here that we've discussed as well. So we may see if we can get a couple of units there hooked up. I mean, this is the sort of grassroots part of getting people hooked up, is just finding somebody that's got a couple of buildings, or, you know, Fletcher over here, same deal, right? A couple of units you've got access to. So lots of opportunity.
I guess just an observation. I think one, it speaks to we have a pretty good reputation if someone is coming to us for this, and I don't know how to estimate what the value of what we're providing this guy is, and I'm not suggesting that we, turn the screws to extract more value. That's not really my game, but I do think, going down this road, we probably, there's probably a lot more opportunity here because, yes, as Andrew observes, he's probably not the only one in this situation, and it wouldn't be surprising to me if we're providing him with $50,000 of value here or something like that. And so it is good to get it in writing that we, have a lease on the roof, but also we probably can put more big antennas on the roof, or, he's probably willing to do us a solid here and whatever the
absolutely.
next phase is.
And that's kind of the conversation we had with him, right? Like, he's committed to sign up those 5 units and to donate monthly on behalf of them, right, for us, and then just to help, hook up other people. And the first thing we asked as soon as we saw his building, we're like, can we put stuff on the roof? Because then we'll go as fast as you want, right? So John and I went out there a couple of days later with an antenna and said, you have internet, go get your certificate of occupancy. We're going to come back in a month with a truck full of equipment. So,
Fifth Avenue Committee has some more buildings in Sunset Park if we need rooftops. And Another interesting thing you mentioned, Mocha. We looked into it years ago, and there is I guess this is what you found as well. There's a box that will do like 200 apartments.
Yeah, Olivier brought that up. There's some like industrial Mocha distribution things, and it's like for this building it didn't make sense because it's like $3,500 for the I don't even know what you call it, like the router.
Yeah.
Right. For here, we're gonna start with one with a couple of splitters, and we're gonna just see how it goes. If we need to add two, we go 2x8 instead of 1x16. I know that I've heard that there's one or two other places that we might have Mocha, but this one's probably kind of new for us. So one clever thing that John came up with in this case is that the Mocha, essentially the thing that's going to distribute Mocha in the basement is actually going to get powered by PoE off that switch, so that if we have an issue with it, we can reset it remotely, right? Because the equipment on the roof will be dedicated power and battery backup. So if the equipment downstairs starts acting up, we'll be able to reset it remotely because we can flip the power on it. Because we're just using, I mean, this is just consumer grade, right? It's, I think, $120 a pair for the Mocha adapters. What you're talking about, that gets into like cable TV, Xfinity, grade distribution, but why not?
Yeah, it's definitely worth it if there's a couple of hundred apartments.
Yeah, I know for sure. Yeah, you don't want to. I certainly don't think that we should be buying 2,000 of those. Those things are going to burn out. Yeah, if we're going to do, if you're going to do 100 or 200 apartments with Mocha, I think you definitely want something that's like carrier grade, has remote management, where you can see what the signal strength is and everything. I mean, this one's going to be pretty light touch.
Yeah,
It's just, their thing is, like, the research that we did, there's nothing in between. There's the $70 unit that can push to 15 devices, and there's the $4,000 unit that can push to, 15 times 20 devices.
We did one building with Mocha, just 3 apartments, I think, and we used the Motorola devices. They're only like $20 each.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, Andrew's got this in, you're using it at home, and that's why we're going with that one. It's a little pricier. Yeah, I've had the same thing. I did Mocha when I first joined because I didn't want to run a bunch of wires in my apartment, and the $25 ones tend to be hot garbage, and the $60 ones tend to be much, much better. I don't know why. These actually are capable of 2.5 gig. We're not going to have a 2.5 gig uplink, so we're not going to try to put switches in to support it yet, but we could. The one thing I would add is the one challenge with Mocha is unless you get very high-end professional equipment, you don't get client isolation. So the 5 or 6 or 8 people that are hooked up to the one feed device, they're not going to be isolated. They're all going to be behind their own routers, so I'm really not worried about it. But it's just something we got to be aware of in case somebody plugs into a LAN port. It could happen. Yeah, there are other. I mean, we could put them all on VLANs. There's a lot of clever ways to do it, but probably not with TP-Link routers. Anybody else? Okay. I think we got one more. Okay, are we all set? Yep. Good to go? Cool. Hi, everyone. I'm John again. I've been doing this series of presentations on this Olmsted Hub I've been working on pretty much this entire year. So this is going to be the same slide that I've shown the past few presentations, but it's a 400-unit apartment building on the Upper West Side off of the 96th Street BC station, right near the Central Park Transverse. It's relatively accessible. It's got 20 stories. It's a set of 4 buildings on a single property, so 1,600 units total, but they're all separate management. We're just doing this one 400-unit buildings for
this one 400 unit building for now. The overall installation was basement, roof, and then each half of the building is kind of its own building with a partition in between. So it was kind of doing two separate 20-story buildings. We decided to install 1 gig and 10 gig fiber to all the units in the building. So that's the goal, that's the background. We've made some progress. We're not all the way there yet, although we're underway. This building is going to be served by a dark fiber link to 325 Hudson Street, which is a data center down in Lower Manhattan. We finally, after I think initiating the process in April, we finally have our fiber landed in the building with ports that we can connect to, with ports, matching ports in the data center. We haven't connected the data center side yet, but the ports are here and ready to go. Zach talked about this a little bit earlier. I reused the picture that we saw earlier as well. This bottom left graph is the visualization of the fiber trace that they provide to basically prove that the fiber link is continuous the entire way through. It's kind of neat. I haven't seen this before, but it'll show you where all the splices were made underneath the street, so you can kind of get an idea of how many splices went into this. And it also says the overall length, which I think was 13 kilometers. If you actually look on Google Maps, it's about an 8-kilometer line of sight, or as the crow flies. So it's doing some winding under the street, I think. So, yep, that's ready to go. We're now on the hook as well for paying monthly for that, so we better start using it as quickly as we can. Next thing we did was we added a high bandwidth link between CCNY up in Harlem and this site. So we can see Andrew in the bottom left with a safety harness on top of CCNY next to their observatory dome, experiment dome thing. And yeah, we were aligning the antennas. The bottom right picture is at the Olmsted end, pointed up towards CCNY. I think it's almost a 2-mile link, so it's very hard to see with the naked eye, but with alignment tools, as you can see in the middle of the screen, it makes it a little bit easier. So that's all good to go, and now we have 1 gigabit duplex traffic capability where we previously had 100 megabit. So yeah, much better performance, although because it's 60 gigahertz, as Matt mentioned, it does go down in the rain. There's a 5 gigahertz backup that drops down to the 100 megabits that we had before. I guess I should also mention that this is intended to supply CCNY with an alternate way out to the internet once the data center gets hooked up. So while it's not ready and being used yet, it's kind of backfeeding Olmsted while the data center isn't live, but it will eventually feed CCNY. Next update, we were running off janky power strips beforehand, just whatever we could find. They actually, the building, we have a good relationship with the building and the maintenance team, and they were able to just add 2 circuit outlets for us. So now we have 2 circuits available in each of the roof rack and the basement rack. So if one circuit trips, we have the other one able to supply power. So that's great. We started installing the fiber to the different units. We're doing a single test floor right now, the 15th floor on the east wing. We got 2 units installed with 1 gig fiber ONUs, and those are working flawlessly, thankfully. The 10 gig ONUs are having some issues. I'm talking to Ubiquiti support about that right now and making progress on that, but for now, the 1 gig is working. So that's good. I actually submitted the board request earlier today for the bill of materials to actually go and expand to the other, I guess, 40 floors of the building. Yeah, so I'll wait on that. Then we wait a month and a half for the cables to come from China, and then we get to start spending probably 1 or 2 weeks of volunteer time installing those in all the different floors. And then, not a very exciting picture. You'll want to look at this later. The link is on Slack, but we've been getting a really good network diagram going of the building, and this has come in handy. Even though I designed this, this has come in handy so many times to just reference what are all the different VLANs and how are all these things connected together. So I want to thank Scott, who isn't here, for making this diagram. But yep, in terms of what's next, we're going to be doing, the rest of the building fiber, and then the data center is going to be coming online. That's working with Zach and getting the servers and the VPP and whatever else installed. And then, hopefully having some people to come during business hours on weekdays to help me run fiber up and down conduits and run through the basement. And then I've changed this multiple times. Hopefully now in October, we'll be able to actually send out the email blast to the 200 residents that have said yes or maybe to being interested in Mesh. And we can say, hey, if you're still interested, sorry about the delay, go to nycmesh.net/join and fill out the form and we'll coordinate an install time. So that's where we're looking. And the list keeps growing and growing. I've got a couple dozen people that have helped out so far. So thanks to the people in the room and people elsewhere that have been helping out. Yep, that's it. Any questions for this presentation? No? Okay, on to the next one. I've been working on another project in the meantime. So SN1 is the Verizon building down right near the Brooklyn Bridge. We're thinking about renaming it because it doesn't actually have an exit to the internet anymore. I'm trying to sell the Pearl Hub idea, but we'll see how that ends up going. It's got a data center built into it and office space. It's got a really good line of sight to a lot of different places, especially looking north into Manhattan. So this antenna, yeah, to Brian's apartment, for example. Yes, node number 3. Network number 3? Doesn't matter. So this bottom left picture is all of the antennas pointing north on top of it. So they sell out data center space. They also sell out antenna space. So right now we have the cream of the crop. We've got the very top, the very kind of northernmost corner of the antenna array, and we filled it to the brim with all of our different stuff. I think we've been there for 8 years or something at this point in time. It's been quite some time. So this was apparently completely empty when we first installed things, and now, as you can see in the bottom right picture, it's completely full. So they are giving us below market pricing to move our antennas out of that prime retail real estate and go and kind of put it in between other customers' antennas. So the idea there is that we'll be able to still get a deal that we can still pay. So the bottom left is kind of the antenna grid diagram that they sent us saying, can you place your antennas here? And that's kind of what we're working towards right now. In addition, we need to move our equipment over from the rack space where it currently is, the bottom left pictures, to a new space that's a little bit smaller, but should still fit our needs. That's the top and the right picture. So we're going to be using a CCR 2004 router, which is an upgrade compared to what was there before. And instead of using little PoE bricks to power all of the rooftop gear, we're going to try and use a redundant power, Ubiquiti edge power that we use at all of our other sites. So yeah, some updates are happening. We also started getting things mounted on the roof. There's the best equipment that we could find, a dinky little copper cable for our grounding into the grounding bus bar. We started mounting an equipment panel as well, and that's all set up. It doesn't have DC power to it yet, but it's getting there. We've got a couple sector antennas mounted. I was talking with Andrew about this very recently, and we have some specific compass headings we want to point them towards, but very soon we'll go back and kind of put them in their final positioning. The bottom middle picture also shows a new thing that we're trying, which is adding grounding at the antenna. So there are these Ubiquiti grounding strap things that you can use to ground the Ethernet cable as well. So that's a fun thing we're trying out for this. Oh, I should mention there are 2 sectors mounted right now. We're going to be mounting 4 total to hopefully cover the whole span where all the existing antennas are pointed. This was kind of the Achilles heel of last time. There's a bunch of really large conduit that we need to run our cables through to get from the equipment rack all the way up to the rooftop. And we thought they were going to be nice and easy to do, but we ended up having a bunch of issues where it's now wedged in there so bad you can't pull it in either direction. So we need to go back and fix that next time. I guess electrical code states that there can only be a certain number of turns in a conduit to try and keep the friction down. I think they're running right up against that limit, and that might be causing us some issues, but we'll work it out next time we're there, which I believe is going to be September 20th if anyone wants to come and help out. So yeah, so in terms of what's next, we're going to be doing the cable runs. We're going to mount the uplink antenna and actually get the site online. The idea was that we set up all the new antennas completely separate from the old stuff because there are I think 70 different rooftops connected to all the old antennas right now. So we don't want to mess with them. We want to set up all the new stuff and then migrate things over in software. So we'll mount the uplink antenna and then be able to start those transitions September and October, and then November, hopefully, I want to be able to turn off all the old equipment, take everything down, and then free up our space and kind of complete our portion of the agreement with the building. And yeah, another bunch of people that have been helping out here. So cool. Thanks, everyone. Question, Ruben.
To turn on? Cool. Awesome. So, as SN1 no longer, perhaps Pearl Hub, is no longer an exit, what is the main uplink going to be connecting to?
So the uplink right now is actually not the data center. It's currently been running off 750 megabit per second AF24 pointed at this building, or 410 Grand Street.
Right.
So that's how it's been running for the past couple of years, as I understand it. We're going to be reusing that AF24 in the new system, but to avoid taking it down and breaking the existing system, we're going to use a 60 gigahertz Wave AP Micro in the meantime. So once everything is said and done, we'll have the AF24 and the Wave AP Micro both pointed at different Grand Street buildings that'll be providing the uplink. And if I understand correctly, Matt, you're going to have your own high-speed link in between here and there, and it'll hopefully provide an alternate means of getting. Yeah.
Okay, sweet. And this is not exactly about this, but the new data center on Hudson, 524 Hudson or whatever it is an additional exit, like in addition to SN10, correct? Or
That'll
is
be an additional exit to
Okay,
SN3 and SN10. Yes,
Okay, cool.
That's correct.
Sweet.
I thought we were going to do Ciclu 10 gigabit between here and
Now is
SN1.
probably not the time to talk about that. We don't need a 10 gigabit link. We got donated Ciclu antennas, but they're only 1 gigabit links. Alignment's also kind of difficult. At the end of the day, it's not really necessary.
The Ciclus are only 1 gigabit?
That's correct.
Oh.
Right. They gave us, I mean, they're still worth a couple $1,000s a piece. We can still use them. It's open for discussion in terms of what the uplink would be, but the AF24 has been serving us well, will continue to serve us well, and I don't see a need to change it. But yeah, if you want to have this conversation about should we be using the Ciclus and stuff, we could probably talk about that and start a thread in Slack.
Okay.
Cool. All right. Do we have other presentations, or are we all good?
I think that's it. The pizza's here.
Cool. Yay, thank you, everyone.